story begins in those very rooms in Baker Street. It was a dark and stormy, morning. The year was 1902. And Dr. John Watson, a middle-aged, strongly built man, with a square jaw, thick neck, and a generous moustache, had just begun his day.
Then, turning its blazing eyes and dripping jaws upon them, the villagers shrieked for fear and ran for dear life. Such is the tale of the Hound of the Baskervilles. Ow!
I'm Dave Roden. I live in Princeton, Illinois.
My name is Jeff Sudikov, and I currently live in Princeton, Illinois. I'm originally from Southern California.
The show will be taking place at the Prairie Arts Center in Princeton, Illinois on March 24th and 25th, 7:30 p.m.
And we do hope to do other performances at other theaters in the future.
Jeff and I were basically indoors for a lot of COVID-19. Jeff said, "Is there something we can read together by Zoom?" And we started working on a play that we found out that we couldn't eventually stage because it took costumes. So we said, what if we did it as a radio play?
All of a sudden, we realized we could never do the show as it was written in the script, but because there was a big sound effects track that you needed to do with it. And we couldn't do that. So we started playing with our own props and playing with our own thing. And then Ed Kazumi, our mystery man, saw my pitiful excuse of a rain machine and said, "I'm going to bail you out." And as a surprise for Dave's birthday, he made a rain machine and we presented it to Dave on his birthday. And Dave turned to me and he said, "We actually can do a show now."
This is our premiere performance because we can't count the number of times that we've just done it in my basement.
The show, you mean?
Most definitely.
Holmes, a thin, wiry, dark man with a high-nosed, acute face, penetrating grey eyes, and angular shoulders, was already at the breakfast table.
I've read many Sherlock Holmes stories when I was young. This one I've read 2 or 3 times recently, and it's amazing how far we have gone away from the original, but have managed to still tell the story of it.
Well, Dr. Watson was intently examining a cane left behind by a visitor who they had missed the previous evening.
Well, Princeton, you've been examining that cane for some time now, and I wish to hear you construct the identity of our mystery visitor.
Really, it's child's play. To read the man's name is J.C. Penney.
You are part of this show. We need you to respond with applause, with laughter, with cheers, with howls. And that's going to make this come alive, and it's going to make you part of the cheers, the laughter, and every single one of those moments.
My dear Holmes, how can you possibly be so sure the dog is a curly-haired spaniel?
Elementary, dear Watson, for the very simple reason that I see the doctor and the dog at our doorstep at this very moment. We shall soon discover why he has come to see us.
I will never get tired of working with Dave. My wife says we are brothers from another mother, and it is very true. We are definitely 2 sides of the same coin. However cliche you want to do it, I can see doing this show with Dave for the next 10 years and do 30, 40 performances of it. But it won't be the only show we're doing. We plan on having other scripts that Dave's going to write and other stories we will tell within this same Her Majesty's Radio Theater with these 2 radio characters and bringing another story to life and another story to life. We plan on having a repertoire of 4 or 5 shows before we're done.
Jeff and I knew each other more in, he was an innkeeper and I was a person who went there and enjoyed the food that was there. And then it was like, I want to do theater, and Jeff became my guy.
I had been out of theater for a long time. I was a professional dancer in California all the way through the 90s. And, for about 15 years, I was a professional. And then I retired. And when we were running the inn, we were so busy, I didn't even do any theater for 15, 16 years. And then Dave said, I'm doing this musical, and I think you should be in it. And that kind of brought me back into theater. And it just made me want to do it more and more and more. And
right. And Jeff and I just seem to have the same sense of humor. We could play off of each other. I knew what voice to write from when I was writing for Jeff. I also knew that I would need to make words that were easily pronounceable.
Man, I'm a dyslexic, and he loves to throw words at me that I'm like, he has to literally write them phonetically into the script because, it's not fair. It's just not fair. He's a writer, and I have to learn the script phonetically sometimes in certain parts. I can read, but it's just, it's one of those things.
But no, it is, but it is joyful sometimes for me to go, I don't know if Jeff's going to make it through this particular line.
That's when we have my favorite joke. When I try to fumble through a word and I can't get through it, and I fumble, he says,
that was easy for you to say.
Actually, it wasn't.
That would be lovely.
I am not
Dr. Mortimer, this is my friend, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
Oh, glad to meet you, sir. And I have your name, I've heard your name mentioned in connection with that of Mr. Holmes.
Really now?
Mr. Holmes, I had hardly expected you to possess your Dalish or cephalic skull. Would you have any objection to me rubbing my finger along your parietal fissure?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, it's not my intention to be fulsome, but I must confess that I can covet Mr. Holmes' skull.
What?
I'd love to have his head on my mantle.
We want you to go on a journey with us. So we're not stuck up on who we are. Believe me, if you've read Hound of the Baskervilles, you may not recognize what you're about to see.
Welcome to Her Majesty's Radio Theatre. Coming to you live from the PAC's radio studio. Here is your host, Nigel Baxter Ellis.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Her Majesty's Radio Theatre. I am your host, Nigel Dexter Ellis, and today joining us after closing Lock Up Your Daughters at the Mermaid Theatre, we are once again joined in our studio by one of England's most celebrated, and dare I say my dear friend, Mr. Wilfred Belbrum.
Always a pleasure to join you in the studio, Bexy.
Thank you to my daughter for not being thoroughly embarrassed when I talk about jokes that include the words my Willie.
My character's name is Wilfred. And I'll leave it to your imagination what happens during the show at times. But this is appropriate for all audiences. Right?
I think so.
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The performance will begin in 5,
They heard the howl of the Hound of the Baskervilles!
Now you have everything.
There's now a graphic.